The scent of lemon polish and freshly laundered linen was, for many years, the defining aroma of my life. My name is Elena Ramirez, and for nearly 2 decades, my hands, calloused but capable, brought order and a quiet gleam to the opulent, cavernous homes of the wealthy. It was honest work, often tiring, sometimes invisible, but I took pride in it. Each swept floor, each gleaming surface, each perfectly plumped cushion was a testament to my diligence. A small act of creation in a world that often felt designed to overlook women like me. This work, this relentless scrubbing and polishing, was the altar upon which I laid my sacrifices for my son, Mateo. He was my sun, my moon, my stars, the reason my aching back and weary feet found the strength to carry on day after day. Mateo was a bright boy, his mind quick and curious, his heart kind. From the moment he was born, I knew my purpose was to give him the opportunities I never had. I was a widow, his father taken by a sudden illness when Mateo was just a babe in arms. We lived in a tiny, 2-room apartment in the less fashionable part of the city, a world away from the sprawling mansions where I spent my days. Every penny I earned, every extra shift I took, went towards his education, good books, after-school tutoring when I could afford it, and the fervent, whispered prayer that he would one day soar beyond the confines of our humble existence. He never disappointed me. He devoured knowledge like a starving man at a feast, his grades impeccable, his teachers full of praise for his intellect and his quiet determination. For the last 10 of those working years, my primary employers were Mr. Alistair and Mrs. Genevieve Sterling, the Sterlings. Their name was synonymous with old money and even older parsimony. Their mansion, a formidable stone edifice on the city's most exclusive hill, was a museum of inherited wealth, filled with heavy mahogany furniture, somber oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors, and enough silver to outfit a royal banquet. Yet an air of neglect, of penny pinching, clung to the place like dust motes in a forgotten attic. Mrs. Sterling would count the sugar cubes in the bowl, and Mr. Sterling was known to scrutinize the electricity bill with the intensity of a biblical scholar deciphering ancient scrolls. My duties were extensive, cleaning the seemingly endless rooms, laundering their delicate linens by hand, as Mrs. Sterling distrusted the harshness of modern machines on her ancient trousseau, polishing the acres of silver until my reflection stared back, a ghostly, tired woman. They were exacting employers, quick to point out a missed spot, a less than perfectly aligned curtain. Compliments were non-existent. My continued employment was, I suppose, considered praise enough. The pay was barely adequate, always a few days late, and any request for a modest raise was met with a pursed-lipped lecture from Mrs. Sterling on the current economic climate and the generosity of my existing wage, but I endured it. The job was steady, if soul-crushing, and Mateo was nearing the end of his high school years, his sights set on a scholarship to a prestigious university, then law school. That dream kept me going. The incident, the one that shattered my carefully constructed, fragile world, happened on a bleak Tuesday in November. I remember the sky was the color of slate, mirroring the coldness that always seemed to emanate from the Sterling mansion. I had just finished my day's work. My back ached. My hands were raw from cleaning solution, but the house gleamed, a temporary triumph over dust and decay. I was in the small utility room off the kitchen, gathering my worn coat and bag, when Mrs. Sterling swept in, her face a mask of icy displeasure. Mr. Sterling loomed behind her, his expression equally grim. "Elena," Mrs. Sterling began, her voice devoid of its usual brittle politeness, replaced now with a chilling accusation. "A rather valuable piece of jewelry, a diamond brooch that belonged to my grandmother, has gone missing from my dressing table." My heart gave a sickening lurch. "Missing, madam? I haven't seen any brooch." I always made a point of never touching their personal items beyond what was necessary for cleaning. "Don't play a fool with me, Elena. Mr. Frieshen's 24 the Brise." Sterling interjected, his voice a low growl. "It was there this morning. You were the only other person with access to the master suite today. You cleaned the dressing room." "Yes, sir. I cleaned it, as I always do," I said, my voice trembling slightly despite my effort to remain calm. "But I would never, ever touch something that didn't belong to me. You know that. I have worked for you for 10 years. My record was spotless, my honesty unquestioned, until this very moment." Mrs. Sterling produced a small, almost theatrical sniff. 10 years of opportunity, Elena. Perhaps the temptation finally became too much. These are difficult times, are they not? The insinuation was vile, a cruel twist of the knife given my own financial struggles they were well aware of, and did nothing to alleviate. "I did not take your brooch," I insisted, my voice rising despite myself. "Please, search my bag. Search me if you must. I have nothing to hide." "Oh, I hardly think that will be necessary," Mr. Sterling said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Your guilt is quite apparent." He was an imposing man, used to getting his way, his pronouncements delivered with the weight of divine edict. "Frankly, Elena, we are deeply disappointed. After all our generosity." Generosity. The word was a mockery. Then came the hammer blow. "Obviously, your employment here is terminated, effective immediately," Mrs. Sterling announced, her eyes like chips of ice. "And as for your outstanding wages for this month, I think we can consider the value of the stolen brooch as more than adequate compensation for that." Stolen brooch. No wages. Fired. The words rained down on me, each one a stone. I stood there, stunned, the blood draining from my face. They weren't just accusing me, they were robbing me, using this fabricated theft to avoid paying me what I was owed. Their miserliness had found its ultimate, cruel expression. "But that's not fair," I stammered. "I worked for that money. I didn't steal anything." "Fairness, Elena, is a luxury, Mr. Sterling said, his lips curling into a sneer. "Consider yourself fortunate we are not involving the police. Now, I suggest you leave the premises. Quietly." The threat hung heavy in the air. The police. The shame. The impact on Mateo. I felt a wave of dizziness, of utter helplessness. My protests died in my throat. Defeated, humiliated, and fighting back tears of rage and despair, I stumbled out of that cold, opulent prison, my meager wages for a month of hard labor stolen from me, along with my reputation. The walk home was a blur of unshed tears and a burning sense of injustice. How could they do this? After 10 years of loyal service, of meticulous care, of enduring their petty tyrannies. The accusation itself was a wound, But the calculated cruelty of using it to withhold my pay, knowing how desperately I needed it for Mateo, that was a special kind of evil. Telling Mateo was the hardest part. He was 17 then, in his final year of high school, buried in college applications and scholarship essays, his future a bright, shining star on the horizon. When I finally choked out the story, his initial disbelief quickly turned to a cold, adult fury that startled me. His usual gentle eyes hardened. "They can't do this, Mama," he said, his voice tight with an anger that mirrored my own. "They can't just accuse you, steal your wages, and ruin your name. It's wrong. It's illegal." "But Mateo, they are rich, powerful," I whispered, the fight draining out of me. Who would believe me? A poor housekeeper, against the word of the Sterlings. He took my rough, work-worn hands in his smooth, young ones. "I believe you, Mama. And one day, I'll make them answer for this. I promise you. I'll become a lawyer, and I will make them pay for every tear you've shed." His words, spoken with such fierce conviction, planted a tiny seed of hope in the barren wasteland of my despair. But the years that followed were hard, harder than anything I had endured before. The Sterlings, I soon discovered, had not been idle. Whispers of my theft had spread through the network of wealthy households where I might have sought employment. Doors that were once open to me were now firmly shut. No one wanted to hire a thieving maid. The stain of their false accusation was indelible. I eventually found work, piecemeal and poorly paid, cleaning anonymous office buildings late at night, or taking in laundry for families in my own neighborhood who knew my character and pitied my plight. Every cent went to keeping our tiny apartment, to putting food on our table, and, most importantly, to Mateo's education fund. He worked just as hard, securing scholarships, taking on part-time jobs while excelling at university, then at law school. His dream of becoming a lawyer, once a general ambition, had now become a laser-focused mission, fueled by the injustice done to me. He'd call me late at night from his cramped dorm room, his voice tired but resolute, telling me about his classes, his mock trials, his growing understanding of the legal weapons he would one day wield. "Just a little longer, Mama," he'd say. "We're getting there." Those years were a blur of scrimping, saving, and praying. There were times I wanted to tell him to give up on me, to focus on his own future, to forget the slight that had cast such a long shadow over our lives. But I knew his promise to me was a sacred fire that drove him, and a part of me, the part that still burned with a quiet rage, needed to believe that justice, however delayed, was possible. 7 long years after that bleak November day, Mateo graduated from law school, magna cum laude. I sat in the audience, my heart swelling with a pride so fierce it brought tears to my eyes. Tears of joy this time, not sorrow. He looked so handsome, so capable in his graduation gown, a world away from the furious, helpless boy who had vowed to defend his mother. He'd passed the bar on his first attempt and joined a small but tenacious law firm known for taking on civil rights and employment discrimination cases. A few months later, he sat me down at our small kitchen table, a determined glint in his eye that I recognized from 7 years prior. He spread out a series of documents. "Mama," he said, his voice calm but firm. "It's time. We have a strong case for wrongful termination, unpaid wages, and, most importantly, defamation of character against Mr. and Mrs. Sterling." A tremor of fear went through me. The Sterlings. Their power. The old wounds throbbed. "Mateo, are you sure?" It's been so long. They will have expensive lawyers. We have so little. We have the truth, Mama, he said, covering my hand with his. And I have the law. Their accusation was baseless. They offered no proof. They never reported any theft to the police, which they would have if it were genuine, especially for a valuable diamond brooch. They did it to cheat you out of your wages and to silence you. Their actions damaged your ability to earn a living for years. That's defamation. That's quantifiable damage. And I am not the scared 17-year-old boy anymore. I am your lawyer. And so, the battle began. Mateo filed the lawsuit. The Sterlings, as expected, reacted with outrage and arrogance. They hired a team of lawyers from one of the city's most prestigious and notoriously aggressive firms. The legal wrangling was intense. Their lawyers tried every trick in the book to dismiss the case, to drown Mateo in paperwork, to intimidate us with threats of countersuits for frivolous litigation. The depositions were grueling. I had to sit across a polished table from Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, their faces masks of contempt, and recount, under oath, the humiliating details of my dismissal, the hardship I had endured. Their lawyers were relentless, trying to twist my words, to paint me as incompetent, disgruntled, a liar. But Mateo was magnificent. He was calm, precise, his questions to the Sterlings sharp as scalpels, exposing the inconsistencies in their story, their lack of any credible evidence of theft, their clear motive for avoiding payment. He highlighted their history of tardy wage payments to me, documented through my old bank statements. He brought in character witnesses, former colleagues from other households, neighbors, who testified to my unwavering honesty and diligence over decades. The Sterlings' defense centered on their sincere belief that I had stolen the brooch, but under Mateo's cross-examination, their sincere belief began to look more like a convenient excuse. He asked Mrs. Sterling to describe the brooch in detail, to produce a purchase receipt, an insurance valuation, even a photograph. She became flustered, vague. It was an antique, she'd stammered. A family heirloom. One doesn't keep receipts for such things. Mr. Sterling blustered about his right as an employer to protect his property. Mateo calmly pointed out that they had never filed a police report, never made an insurance claim for this supposedly priceless heirloom. Why not, if they were so certain a theft had occurred? Their answers were evasive, unconvincing. The turning point came when Mateo managed to track down two former housekeepers who had worked for the Sterlings before me. Both had left under similar circumstances, accused of petty thefts, a missing silver spoon, a few dollars from a wallet, just when their wages were due, and both had been too intimidated or too poor to fight back. Their sworn affidavits, detailing a clear pattern of the Sterlings using false accusations to avoid paying staff, were explosive. Faced with this new evidence, and the prospect of a very public, very damaging trial that would expose their miserly, exploitative practices to the world, the Sterlings' lawyers suddenly became much more amenable to negotiation. The trial was scheduled to begin in 2 weeks when they offered a settlement. Mateo, ever the professional, presented it to me. It was a significant sum, enough to cover all my lost wages tenfold, substantial damages for defamation, and all our legal costs. It also included a carefully worded statement to be signed by the Sterlings, retracting their accusation of theft and acknowledging my long and diligent service, though it stopped short of a full apology. "It's not everything we wanted, Mama," Mateo said, his brow furrowed. "The apology is weak, but it's a clear win. It clears your name publicly, and it provides for your future." I looked at my son, this brilliant, determined man, who had moved heaven and earth to fight for me. The money was secondary. My name, my dignity, that was what mattered. And he had given it back to me. "It's enough, Mateo," I said, my voice thick with tears. "It's more than enough. You did it." The day the settlement was finalized, a quiet peace settled over me, a peace I hadn't felt in 7 years. The weight of shame, of injustice, finally lifted. The sterling statement, though grudging, was published as part of the settlement record. My name was cleared. The money, when it came, was overwhelming. I bought a small, sunny condominium in a quiet neighborhood, with a little balcony where I could grow herbs and flowers. No more scrubbing other people's floors. I had enough to live comfortably, to finally rest my weary bones. But the greatest reward was seeing Mateo. He had fulfilled his promise. His victory in my case earned him a reputation as a fearless, principled lawyer, a champion for the underdog. His small firm began to grow, taking on more cases of injustice, fighting for those the world so often overlooked. Sometimes, as I sit on my sunny balcony, tending my small container garden, the scent of lemon polish and old linen still drifts into my memory. But it's no longer a scent of shame or servitude. It's a reminder of a past I survived, a battle I fought alongside my incredible son, and a testament to the enduring truth that honesty, diligence, and a mother's love, when armed with justice, can indeed move mountains. Even mountains made of sterling silver and cold, hard cash. The taste of that victory was sweeter than any riches. It was the taste of dignity restored.